I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough.
Hollywood icon Robert Redford, the golden boy of the silver screen, passed away peacefully at 89 in his beloved Utah home. However, what was found after his death has left even those closest to him stunned. Was it a hidden script or lost artifact from his famous films? Known as the quiet rebel and Sundance founder, Redford's legacy now takes an unexpected turn. In this video, we unveil shocking discoveries from his private mountain retreat, revealing the untold story behind his legendary career and mysterious secrets. The Golden Boy of Hollywood. When Robert Redford burst onto the Hollywood scene, it didn't take long for him to become a household name. With his wavy blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and natural charisma, he fit the mold of a leading man with ease. But beneath the surface of that golden image was an artist deeply determined to be more than just a pretty face. His early breakout roles in Barefoot in the Park and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid established him as a screen idol, but Redford resisted being typecast. As the industry tried to sell him as the next romantic poster boy, Redford quietly pivoted.
Is that you were kind of like that as a kid? You were a bit of an outlaw yourself. You were a rebel.
Yes, that's true. As I got older and I went into acting, I was drawn to the idea of outlaw characters.
He took on political thrillers like All the President's Men and The Candidate, where he played characters that mirrored his own social conscience. In The Electric Horseman, he portrayed a broken rodeo star, flawed, human, and far from the typical hero. He wasn't afraid to challenge the image others had built around him. As director Sidney Pollack once said about Redford, he's got the looks of a matinee idol, but the soul of an artist. That's why he's lasted. Even in romantic dramas like Out of Africa, Redford brought depth and subtlety that few actors could match. He became one of the few stars in the 70s who could bring audiences into a theater purely on name alone, yet he used that power to tell more meaningful stories. As his popularity soared, Redford became known not just for his roles, but for the integrity he brought to them. Fellow actor Paul Newman, his co-star in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, once remarked, "Bob never wanted to be just a movie star. He wanted to make films that mattered." He turned down big paychecks in favor of roles that said something real. While other stars chased fame, Redford was building a legacy, one that would eventually shape the entire direction of independent film. Redford may have seemed larger than life on screen, but off-screen, he built a quiet legacy few understood, until now. The man behind Sundance. Robert Redford may have been a Hollywood star, but his most lasting impact came not from a movie role, but from a movement he quietly launched in the mountains of Utah. In the late 1970s, while other stars were investing in restaurants and real estate, Redford bought a large piece of land near Mount Timpanogos. Originally intended as a peaceful ski retreat, the land became the foundation of the Sundance Institute, a revolutionary step that would change film forever. Redford believed the mainstream film industry had grown too safe, too corporate. He saw too many bold, original voices being shut out by studios obsessed with profits.
I think you have to look at where it all started. And for me, it started when I was a kid growing up in Los Angeles. Once the war ended and money came back into the picture, things changed. And suddenly there was development out of control.
That's why he created Sundance. Not just as a festival, but as a home for independent storytelling. Quentin Tarantino, whose career took off at Sundance, said, "Without Sundance, I wouldn't have a career." Robert Redford gave me and so many others a platform when nobody else would. At a time when indie film wasn't even a popular term, Redford offered mentorship, funding, and exposure to filmmakers who were ignored by Hollywood. Names like Quentin Tarantino, Steven Soderbergh, Darren Aronofsky, and Paul Thomas Anderson all owe part of their early success to the space he created. The Sundance Film Festival, held each year in Park City, became more than an event. It became a cultural shift. It celebrated diversity, raw storytelling, and filmmaking that wasn't afraid to take risks. Steven Soderbergh echoed this sentiment, saying, Sundance was the place that made everything possible for me. Redford created an environment where risk wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. Redford rarely appeared center stage. He didn't make it about himself. Instead, he stepped back and let others shine. And all the while, back in his Utah estate, just over the hills from Park City, Redford was storing pieces of himself the world had never seen. Losses, legacy, and retirement. Despite a life filled with professional triumphs, Robert Redford knew pain and loss on a deeply personal level. His story wasn't just one of fame and influence, it was also marked by tragedy. In 1959, Redford lost his first son, Scott, to sudden infant death syndrome. Decades later, in 2020, his son James, an activist and filmmaker like his father, died of liver cancer at just 58. These personal heartbreaks stayed mostly out of the public eye, but they left a lasting imprint on the man behind the legend. Redford was never one to chase headlines about his private life. He carried grief with grace and channeled his energy into his work, his art, and his activism. Still, the pain was always there, behind the thoughtful eyes and quiet voice. Friends say these experiences helped shape his later career decisions. In 2018, Redford announced that he would retire from acting after the release of The Old Man and the Gun, telling Entertainment Weekly that it was time to step away and enjoy life with his wife, Sibyl, and the remaining members of his family.
You know, I can't do this forever. I've been doing it since I was 21. As you move into your 80s, you say, hey, that's enough.
His farewell performance was deeply symbolic. A career criminal looking back on a life of quiet rebellion. It was a role that echoed his own journey. After over 60 years in the spotlight, Redford didn't chase one last blockbuster. Critic Leonard Maltin reflected, "Redford chose to bow out on his own terms, and that's rare in Hollywood. He always cared more about the work than the fame. Instead, he chose a film that felt personal, poetic, and final." He left the screen with dignity, just as he had lived his life. And that legacy became even more fascinating with what his family discovered after his passing. The mysterious Utah Mansion. High in the serene mountains of Utah, far from the glitz of Los Angeles or the buzz of New York, sat Robert Redford's most cherished possession, his secluded mansion at Sundance. More than just a home, this was his sanctuary. Nestled among forests and snow-dusted peaks, the property reflected everything Redford stood for: privacy, nature, simplicity, and independence. Robert Redford himself once explained how much this solitude meant to him. "I've been able to carve out spaces for myself. At Sundance, I'm in the mountains. My property is private. I get on a horse and ride for 3-4 hours, sometimes 5. I get lost. But when I'm in, I'm in." It wasn't flashy or over-designed. It was rustic, quiet, and intentional, designed to blend into the landscape rather than dominate it. The home itself was eco-friendly and built with sustainability in mind. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was a reflection of his lifelong commitment to environmental activism. Redford once put it in stark terms: "I think the environment should be put in the category of our national security. Defense of our resources is just as important as defense abroad. Otherwise, what is there to defend?" But as the family began to sort through the estate, they uncovered something within those walls that no one expected. What they found inside. When Robert Redford passed away peacefully at his beloved Sundance home, his family believed they were simply saying goodbye to a man who had lived fully and left nothing unsaid. But as they stepped inside the quiet, wood-paneled rooms of his Utah estate, they began uncovering pieces of his life that had been carefully hidden from the world. Pieces that would completely reshape the story of who Redford really was. Tucked away in a private study, behind shelves filled with classic literature and film scripts, were dozens of leather-bound journals. Handwritten, meticulously dated. They chronicled not just decades of career notes, but personal reflections, private regrets, political observations, and detailed environmental strategies. Inside, Redford had preserved a collection of rare artifacts, original Sundance Film Festival documents, and handwritten letters from Paul Newman.
And what did you learn from working with Paul Newman?
He's a very honest man and a very generous man. Those are the two things that hit me, because when we worked together on the film we did, the Butch Cassidy, the studio, excuse me, the studio did not want me because I was not well known like he was.
Archivists from the Sundance Institute have since been granted access to begin preserving and cataloging the collection. Early reports suggest that a posthumous documentary or museum exhibit may be in development, offering the public its first real look inside Redford's inner world. What he left behind wasn't meant for fame. It was for the truth, for legacy. If this glimpse into Robert Redford's private world left you stunned, you're not alone. What he built quietly is now echoing louder than ever. Like this video, leave a comment about your favorite Redford film, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood legends. And if you thought this was revealing, wait until you see what's been uncovered in Paul Newman's estate. Click the next video now.